Hello children. Now today we are going to look at the second second technique in the improvement in crop yield, which is crop production management. Okay. Now in this technique, okay, it has three basic components. Okay. So crop production management has three basic components. First one is nutrient management. Okay. So in order to produce a crop which is giving us high yield, we have to balance the nutrients which are going into that particular plant. Okay. Then you have to have a good irrigation system for that particular plant. And then you also have to have the cropping management. Cropping management means how to put one crop on other crop. Okay. How to exchange those crops that we are going to learn. Okay. Now let's go to the first one, which is nutrient management. So when we are talking about nutrient management, plant get nutrients from air, water and soil. So this you people already know and you have been learning from right from your younger age. Okay, right? Now there are 16 nutrients required by plants for their proper growth. Okay, so there are 16 nutrients which are required for proper growth. Okay, for proper growth, 16 nutrients are required. Now, air supplies oxygen and carbon dioxide, water supplies hydrogen, and the remaining 13 nutrients are obtained from the soil. So that is why soil is very, very important. So air is supplying oxygen and carbon dioxide. Now this is by the process of photosynthesis of plants, and also air is containing oxygen and carbon dioxide. Okay. Now then you have water which is supplying hydrogen, which is very, very essential for the plant for its growth. And then the remaining 13 nutrients are present in the soil. That is, they are obtained from the soil. Okay, right. Then among the 16 nutrients which are required by the plants, 6 are required in large amounts and then in large quantities and are called macronutrients. So the nutrients which are required in large quantities are called macronutrients. Okay, nutrients which are required in large amounts, now they are called as macronutrients. And macronutrients include nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium and sulfur. I'll repeat it once again. Macronutrients are nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium and sulfur. Okay, and the other 7 are required in smaller quantities, and they are called as micronutrients. Okay, macro means big, micro means small. Okay, so they are called as micronutrients. Now what are those micronutrients? Soil, the micronutrients are iron, magnesium, boron, zinc, copper, molybdenum and chlorine. Okay, these are the micronutrients. Now soil can be enriched by supplying nutrients in the form of manures and fertilizers. So manures and fertilizers, we'll look at in the later part of this particular topic. Okay, now macronutrients and micronutrients, so both are required by the plant for its effective growth. Okay, right? Now moving on, manure. Okay, so what are the things which are required for growth? We'll see now. Manure. Okay, now manure is prepared by decomposition of plant and animal waste. So you people already know it, how manure is prepared. Decomposition of plant and animal waste. Okay, then it contains organic matter and nutrients. Okay, it contains organic matter and nutrients. It helps to increase soil fertility. Now the advantage of using manure is it is from a biological source. Okay, and then it also helps in improving the soil fertility. Okay, now it also helps to reduce use of fertilizers. So chemical fertilizers are a little dangerous for the plants, so that manure actually reduces the use of fertilizers and recycle farm waste and protects the environment. Okay, so this manure can be recycled again. Okay, and then they can be protecting the environment. So this is the major thing that we have to see, that the environment is not polluted by these chemical fertilizers. So using of manure is a very good idea. Okay, now there are two types of manure which are seen. Okay, the first one is compost and the second one is green manure. Okay, now we'll see what is a compost and what is green manure. Excuse me. Now, compost is prepared by decomposition of plant and animal waste in compost pits. So you might have seen what compost pits are and how do they look like. Okay. Now, compost is prepared by using earthworms called vermicompost. Compost is rich in organic matter and nutrients. Okay. Now, this compost pit, when we are talking about it, it contains a bed of rocks, and on that there is another small bed of smaller rocks, and on that we put soil. Okay, and after that we put earthworms. Okay, now these worms are purchased from outside. Okay, and then we mix the mud along with the vegetable waste or animal waste or anything. Okay, and we keep it on one side. Okay, so what happens, these earthworms will come and eat at one side, and some of it we can replace it on the other side. So what will happen, by doing this we are actually spreading the waste or organic waste across the entire compost pit. So when we are doing that, what is happening, the earthworms are spread all around the pit. Okay, and they start eating it, and then when they excrete this manure or the compost. Okay, now when we are harvesting the compost, what we do, we put some organic matter at one end of the vermicompost pit. So what will happen, whatever earthworms are there, they move towards the compost, the organic waste which we have put, and whatever is left on the other side, we take it out, and we can further process it, and we get compost, and that can be used for the plants. Okay, so that is how compost is made using earthworms. Okay, then green manure. Now what is this green manure? Before sowing seeds in the field, some green plants like sun hemp, gore, etc. are mixed in the soil by ploughing. So some plants, they are mixed in the soil itself before ploughing. Now why are we doing that? Because these plants are a good source of nitrogen and phosphorus for the plant which is to be grown. Okay, so every plant require nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium. Okay, out of that, these plants are very good source. So that is sun hemp and gore are very good sources of nitrogen and phosphorus. Okay, right? So that is what is written here. These plants turn into green manure which make the soil rich in nitrogen and phosphorus. So there are some plants which are grown and then plowed back into the soil and made as green manure, and they are called as basically green manure. Okay, right. So these are the different two types of manures which are present in this world. Okay, then you have fertilizers. Fertilizers are chemical substances. Now these are chemical substances. Okay, made commercially. They are made in factories. They supply nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium. So nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium is called as NPK. Okay, right? NPK, nitrogen, potassium and phosphorus. Okay, and helps to increase the crop yield. Obviously, when these three are given chemically, the crop yield also will increase. Now, fertilizer should be used only in required amounts. It is not that we have taken a bag and started spraying on the field. Okay, so what will happen? If this is excess, the plant will not be able to survive properly. It will not be able to give us good yield. So, fertilizer should be used only in required amounts. Okay, only in required amounts. Excessive use of fertilizers can reduce the soil fertility and also cause water pollution. So that is the main thing that we have to avoid, water pollution, because if water pollution is there and that water is processed and then we are drinking, if this is entering into the system, they cause a lot of damage. Okay, so that is why we have to use it as recommended by the people who are well versed with it. Okay, moving on. So these are some of, this is the compost. Okay, okay, and these are some of the green manure crops, like you have can see here cowpea. Okay, now Sesbenia orilitita. Okay, then Crotalinia Jansia. Okay, all these are scientific names, but for making your life easy, I have given the names of crops which are used as green manure. Okay, that is the linseed crop. Okay, horse gram, sun hemp, which we discussed, lobia, and green gram. Okay, so these are the plants which are used as green manure. That is, they are grown and then they are plowed back into the soil. Okay, right? So these are basically green manure crops. Okay, right? Now moving on to the next part in crop management, which is irrigation. Okay, now irrigation is what? Basically supplying water to the crops. Okay, water being supplied to the crops is what is called as irrigation. Okay, now water is necessary for the proper growth of plants and helps to increase crop yield. Okay, so crop yield, if we have to increase, we have to give water, simple as that. Okay, and mind you, we should not overwater the plants, because the plant needs air for its respiration in the soil also. So if we put more water, the water will go and occupy the spaces and the plant will not be able to breathe and the plant will die. It is as simple as that. So we have to water the plants, but we have to be very, very careful. So when we are watering the plants, that step is called as irrigation. Okay, then different kinds of irrigation systems are used to supply water to agricultural land. Okay, like you might have seen this in your villages: wells, canals, rivers, tanks, check dams, etc. So these are basically the types of systems, that is the irrigation systems which are used. We'll just see them one by one so that it will be more clearer. Wells. Okay, now wells are, there are two types of wells called, first one is dug wells and the second one is tube wells. Dug wells are what? They are made by hand, they are man-made. Tube wells are, they are taken from the under the earth with the help of a motor. Okay, right? Now in dug wells, water is collected from bearing strata. Okay, right? And in tube wells, water is collected from deeper strata. That is, dug wells means what? Bearing strata means from the very close source of water. That is, the water is very, very close. When you dig it, you get the water immediately. Okay. Then in tube well, water is collected from deeper strata. Deeper strata means deep down the earth. Okay, right? Deep down the earth, the water is collected using tubes. Okay. Now, so these are basically wells, dug wells and tube wells. Then you have canals. In this system, canals receive water from reservoirs or rivers and distribute it into the fields. So you might have seen when we are going to our villages, if we have dams next to it, you can see some canal flowing. Okay, now that canal is actually flowing and getting directed into smaller canals, and that smaller canals are directed to the fields. Okay, because of that, the crop yield can be increased. So irrigation also plays a major role. Then you have river lift systems. In this system, water is lifted from rivers to irrigate fields close to the rivers. Now, a river is flowing next to a field. So how do the water come there? How does the water is taken up there? You have a river lift system. So you have a technique, I'll show you the image also. Now in that, the water is lifted from the river, that is through any vessel it is lifted, and then it is put into another canal where the water is transferred to the fields. But this is possible only when the system or the crop is near to the river. Okay, then you have tanks. Now these are small storage reservoirs which supply water to the field. So simple tanks is nothing but like your overhead tank you have, okay, which supplies water to our home. Similarly, for crops also you have tanks. They are small storage reservoirs, okay, and they supply water to the fields, okay. Then you have check dams. Now what are these check dams? Now check dams are used to stop rainwater from flowing away and help to increase groundwater levels and reduce soil erosion. So you know that soil erosion is a major problem now because the plants are destroyed or deforested, okay. So check dams are very, very essential to stop the rainwater from just going away as a waste, okay. It helps to increase groundwater levels and reduce soil erosion. So check dams will reduce the soil erosion as well as increase the groundwater levels, which is very, very important now. So these are the various irrigation techniques which are used, and this is a well which is dug with the hand. This is a canal. These are check dams which are used for harvesting, and these are the river lift systems. Okay, these are the river lift systems wherein a farmer is pulling a lever, because of which the water from the river is channelized into the farms. Okay, right? So these are basically the images of the canal, well, check dam and river lift system. Okay, right, moving on. Cropping patterns. Now the third one. Okay, this is the cropping patterns. Now, in order to increase the yield, this is one of the third technique which is used. Okay, crop production management. This is one of the third technique which is used, which is cropping patterns. Now, in cropping patterns, different ways of growing crops are used for maximum benefit. So, for maximum benefit, you use different crops. Okay, now these include mixed cropping, intercropping and crop rotation. Mixed cropping, intercropping and crop rotation. So these are the three types of cropping patterns which are used by farmers to improve the yield and also to get maximum benefit. Okay, now mixed cropping. Now what is mixed cropping? Mixed cropping is growing two or more crops simultaneously in the same field. Okay, so mixed cropping is two or more crops are grown simultaneously in the same field. How? We'll see that. Example is wheat plus gram. So in one row or in two rows wheat is grown, and next to those two rows you have a gram plants growing. Okay, right? Then wheat plus mustard, groundnut plus sunflower. Okay, now why is that mixed cropping done? It is done to reduce the risk of, even if one crop fails, other crop is there. Okay, so that is also to benefit the farmer only. Okay, right? So wheat plus gram is taken, wheat plus mustard is taken, then groundnut plus sunflower is taken. And why are these taken? They are taken because if one crop is failing, the other crop is there to benefit the farmer. Okay, that is basically what is mixed cropping. Okay, then intercropping. What is intercropping? Intercropping is growing two or more crops simultaneously in the same field in alternate rows. Okay, so in alternate rows, say for example, if one row of the plant has maize, other row will have soya bean. Okay, and if one row of the plant is having millet, other row will have cowpea. Okay, right? So this is basically what is intercropping, that is growing two or more crops simultaneously in the same field in alternate rows, one after the other. Okay, now crop with different nutrient requirements are selected. So in intercropping, different nutritional requirement crops are selected. This helps in better use of nutrients and prevents spreading of diseases to all plants of the same crop. So the benefit of intercropping is the spread of disease is not there for the same crop. Okay, right? Because it is alternately planted. Okay, right? And the nutrients usage is also improved because of this intercropping. The nutrient usage by the plants also improve. Okay, now going on to the third one, which is crop rotation. Crop rotation is growing different crops in the same field in succession. So one after the other. That is what is crop rotation. Okay, in succession. Now growing leguminous crops after growing cereal crops helps to increase soil fertility. So first when we grow cereal crops, okay, the nutrients will be used up. But after the cereal crops, if you are growing say groundnuts or any other, that is, those are say for example leguminous plants like peas. Okay, not groundnuts, peas. Peas are leguminous plants. Okay, right? Now leguminous plants, what they do, they increase the soil fertility because they have root nodules which have a bacteria which is called as rhizobium. Okay, and that rhizobium helps in fixing the atmospheric nitrogen because these leguminous plants do not have the capacity to absorb nitrogen. So rhizobium in turn is taking shelter in that plant and it is benefiting that plant by fixing up the atmospheric nitrogen. Okay, so if we grow if we grow cereal crops and after that we grow leguminous crops, because the nitrogen is fixed back into the soil, then that will increase the soil fertility. Okay, now if crop rotation is done properly, two or three crops can be grown in a year profitably. If we are applying this crop rotation technique properly, then two or more crops can be grown in a year. Okay, right? So these are basically the cropping patterns which are there. So this is basically crop rotation. You can see in figure 1, aerial view of intercropping corn and soybean, okay, in Gothenburg Learning Center in 2011. So corn and soybean are grown, intercropping is done. Then you have the crop rotation. You can see this is intercropping, okay, and this is the crop rotation. Okay, right? So this plant is grown here and this plant is grown here. Okay, right? This is basically what is crop rotation. Okay, now we will see crop protection management. Now when we talk about crop protection management, crops in the field are damaged by weeds, insect pests and diseases. Okay, so they are damaged by weeds, insect pests and diseases. Okay, right? Now pests are a major problem with the plants. Okay, right? Weeds are also a major problem because weeds, they absorb the nutrients which are basically required by the plants but for their growth also they absorb the nutrients. So the nutrient availability for the plant is reduced. Okay, so we will discuss this crop protection management in the next session. Okay, right? So, but please remember, when we are discussing this crop protection management, we will be discussing about weeds, insect pests and diseases. So I hope that you have understood this session, and in the next session we'll be looking at crop protection management. Thank you.